Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children, as well as babies, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Driveline Academy podcast. I'm your host, Deven Morgan, Director of Baseball at Driveline, founder of the Driveline Academy, and this is the world's most dangerous youth baseball podcast. We're back at it on this beautiful spring break day. Spring break for my kids' schedule. I don't know if spring break for yours. Maybe you guys got it earlier, but we're here and we're back and we got some stuff to talk about. As per usual, first-time listeners, last-time listeners know we're going to start each show with a little bit of housekeeping. So housekeeping starts with axbat.com. Code DL20 will get you 20% off. Having done the read for Axbat for the last several years, I often think about how to do it differently rather than just regurgitate the same stuff to you guys over and over and over. And one thing I think I can just give you today is just like the intention behind the axe bat in and of itself, specifically the axe handle. Because when I first laid eyes on it, which was a disturbingly amount of years ago, it was immediately apparent to me like the problem that it was solving. At the time, I was just a youth baseball coach who was just trying to learn as much as possible, and I had somebody show me actually an axe fast pitch bat. It wasn't even a baseball bat, it was a fast pitch bat. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. This totally makes sense, right? The inherent nature of the axe handle, the OG axe handle, worked to solve problems that I was dealing with as a youth baseball coach, which generally revolve around the fact that kids, when they're young, sometimes don't do the best job of establishing like really good palm up, palm down contact, palm up, palm down configuration of the hands at contact, which starts with stuff up the chain in the swing. Meaning that if we get this part of it sideways early, and oftentimes what I would see is you'd have kids that are in the box and they're here, and then they start getting here, and then they start getting here, and then it's just like the choking a snake type of deal. Although, is that really an effective way to kill a snake, is choke it? You probably know better than I. Anyways, kids would end up with bad positions at contact, right, where we don't have good palm up, palm down orientation of the hands, but the genesis of that issue actually starts up the chain because you just had bad orientation of the hands and the wrists on the bat, period. And inherently, the OG axe handle worked to solve that problem. So since then, I've been a pretty significant proponent that just like every kid under the age of, 8 or 9 should probably start with an axe bat, because we want them to establish a great way to engage with the barrel and the handle specifically, so that it doesn't compromise their mechanics, because that is a thing that can happen. Whether you want to transition to a round knob later, I think is totally up to you. The other thing that the axe handle inherently solves is issues with the handmate bone. This rascal at the bottom of the hand interacting with the round knob and getting some bruising on there. That's like a legitimate thing that can happen. So the axe handle kind of solves that. And even if you don't like the actual axe handle, axe has the option of the flared knob. So you get all the benefits of a round knob where you have some more flexibility about how to engage the hands on the handle of the bat, but without the axe handle firmly defining exactly how that should be done. But you're still not going to run into those issues with handmade injuries because it's a flared knob and it's not a conventional round knob. That's my stump. Axbat.com, code DL20 will get you 20% off of a great bat that is probably going to help your kid establish what good palm up, palm down hand and wrist orientation looks like at contact inherently because of the design of the axe bat. And if you don't necessarily want to do that, they still have the flared knob to serve that need as well. Other stuff from us on the housekeeping side is relatively simple. We've had a lot of kids coming in during the season for snapshot assessments. Pretty great time to just kind of get an idea of like, how's my stuff working and why is it working and why is it not working, getting a jump start on some of the stuff that you might want to start thinking about working on going into the summer and then going into the off season. We are revising some of the way that the output of the snapshot assessment works. We've got a simplified report. Right now, the report that kind of gets typically given is just like the same mocap report that our college and pro guy get. But that can be a little overwhelming for parents. We're working for something that kind of splits a difference there between all the insights that we want to be able to weaponize from the mocap, but also present it in a format that isn't overwhelming. So we got that happening. We're launching a new training product that should be out in the next week or so. more in-gym time for kids who want to come in and train. That's going to be a thing that's coming. We'll push that to next week because it's going to need a whole explanation. So we're going to talk about this week. Is first of all, I just want to start with a thank you. I want to start with a thank you because it is not lost on me that being able to come into this room and talk to you guys for somewhere between like 45 minutes and an hour and a half, depending on how frisky I'm feeling, is a real privilege. And specifically, I think you guys being able to go out and think about the things we talk about on this podcast and then implement that and then send me emails like, hey, man, my development of my team is going great, or my team culture has been really positively impacted because of X, or man, there's not much better than being able to get that type of feedback. And what I want to do is I want to turn that flywheel more. I want to make this show more impactful and more interactive. So basically, I think what we're going to probably do is do a post on socials at a much more frequent cadence and go like, hey, what do you guys see and what can we talk about on the show? And some of that stuff may revolve around things like our This Week's in Pitch Count initiative, which again, if you're following us on Driveline Youth or you're following me on socials, you've been seeing that I've been spinning that up lately. We're up to episode number 3. We'll talk about This Week in Pitch Counts a little bit later in the show. Or if it's just like skill stuff, right? I have a hitter who is casting off, right? I have a pitcher who's having a hard time and everything misses up on the arm side, right? Like I think that there's an opportunity for us to get a little bit more interactive where you guys give me information about the stuff that you're seeing on fields, issues you're running into, coaching teams, training players, building organizations, and then we'll just talk about it, right? We'll just talk. We'll have a conversation, and hopefully I will be able to have some sort of positive effect and distill some of the information and experience that I've had over the last 14 or whatever, 15 or whatever years of doing this and make your lives easier. So number one, I want to say thank you to you guys, first of all. Again, the likes, the subscribes, the notifications, that stuff doesn't mean nothing. It actually means a lot. And the more that we've seen you guys hitting the subscribes like on our YouTube page, right, or hitting the likes and reposting stuff on X, on Instagram, on Facebook or whatever, it helps us promote this message of a differentiated approach to fun, engagement, and development in youth baseball, and not going down the other path that we typically criticize, I suppose is a fair way to frame it. That stuff really means a lot. It really, really does. And you guys tuning in to either watch the show or listen to the show, I am compelled to say thank you. And I feel like I might have done that just a couple of episodes ago, but I'm rolling it right back out. But I'm doing that with the suggestion that we want to continue to make this thing more interactive. So whether you're talking to me over email or whether you find us on socials, I'm going to just get better about like probably a weekly or bi-weekly call out. To see what you guys are seeing on the field, and we will just do that more frequently on the show instead of deciding to do like a Q&A episode when I kind of run out of things to talk about. I'm not going to give away my opportunity to potentially do that more in the future, but usually on a week-by-week basis, I got some stuff to talk about, and we're going to get into that now. But first, I just really wanted to start this with a note of appreciation and thank you for you guys for tuning in. So we got some real youth baseball specific stuff to talk about today, and I think the first one of those things is a rule change that I have been made aware of that came to Little League baseball. Now, when you start to talk about Little League rules, I think with the awareness of the growth of select and club ball, there could be a perspective that just says like who cares? I suppose is like the least charitable way to frame it. But again, I think it's important to remember how many millions and millions of kids play in rec baseball, and their experience is defined by that. And you have a class of kids who both are playing on the rec ball side and then they do club or travel ball too. So the pool gets even bigger. So when Little League starts to make changes to rules, the effect of those changes is very substantial. And one of the more recent rule changes that came out this year, and it kind of flew under the radar for me a bit, but I got a chance to get somebody put me up on game last week about it, is Little League has changed the rule banning thumb guards. In addition to seeing the other grip modification devices, I would guess. So the rule 1.10AR2, bat alterations or modifications. And to quote, no bat at any level of Little League baseball or softball is permitted to be altered. Products such as, but not limited to, choke knobs, choke up assists, or thumb protectors are considered alterations or modifications to the bat and are not permitted. I have some thoughts. Framing a thumb guard, or what they call choke knobs and choke up assists, as a modification to the bat, I understand. I think what you're trying to accomplish, but I have to note that if the reason that these things are being banned is because that they are classified as a modification to the bat, it feels as though the people that were responsible for making this rule change are either maybe not as clued in as they could to be to like the physics of the nature of the bat ball collision, or are like looking for a rule that they can shoebox this that they can force this change in, and I'm not close enough to understand which one of those two things, but because this change is going to affect millions of kids, I think it probably is worth digging into a little bit, right? So what does a thumb guard do? Okay, well, let's talk about thumb guard specifically. A thumb guard specifically is designed to protect the player's thumb from the effects of off-axis vibrations that can happen when a player makes contact with the bat to the ball and like significantly off of kind of like the ideal axis of contact, right? The more that you kind of deviate off of that thing, you have the possibility of what's called off-axis vibration, where, again, not a physicist, probably kind of a dummy, but I've read a lot. You get the ball coming in here, bat clips it off of kind of that ideal axis, and then you get this reverberation in the bat, right? Well, who's going to feel that reverberation? Well, it's going to primarily be felt by the hitter in their hands. So what we're doing when you kind of use the thumb guard is you're just giving a little bit of like a rubber dampening to that effect, specifically on the thumb and I guess the back, kind of the back side of that muscular part of the hand where it engages with the bat. Is that a bat modification? Well, no, it's not. You are not doing anything to modify the bat to ball equation, right? You're not eliminating the capacity for off-axis vibration caused by non-ideal contact. What you are doing is you are mitigating the effect of said issue. So framing this as a bat modification seems a little bit... We're a little off target here. We're just a little bit off target. Now, the choke-up thing, a different deal. We have a very interesting study that's been published on the Driveline blog years ago that actually examined what's happening from a biomechanics perspective when guys are choking up. We, on this show, have talked potentially an embarrassing amount about this idea of swing weight and moment of inertia, and that's just because I invented some bats, and I want you guys to understand the benefits of that invention. But all that's going on, if you have your player utilize a device that is kind of giving them more of a different engagement point on the bat that allows them choking up, is you are reducing swing weight. You're reducing moment of inertia because you're shifting the center of the axis of rotation of that bat closer to the mass of that bat, right? I think I was hanging out with my brother-in-law, who I know listens to this show, and I love dearly. So thank you for listening, Joe McKinley, if you happen to be listening. I think, if I remember correctly, I was trying to explain this idea of swing weight to him this last weekend, and we were out on the deck, and I had a broom on the deck because we had been doing a little pre-event sweeping, and I was like, look, here's the way that this works. If you grab a broom by halfway up the end of that broom, so halfway between the end of the broom that we would be pushing with and the actual broom, I don't know the technical way to describe a broom, the stuff with the bristles on it, right? If you move your hand halfway up that thing, you can wave it around pretty easily, right? Well, think about holding a bat. The more that I move my hands up the handle closer to the barrel, it's easier for me to manipulate that thing. What's happening in a physics standpoint is I'm reducing the moment of inertia by moving my hands and my engagement point closer to where the mass is, right? Or, I guess another way to say that is I'm actually bringing the mass closer to the center of the axis of rotation. Does that make sense? Okay. So with that understanding, any device that you put on a bat that helps a kid choke up is not a modification to the bat. You're not changing the physical properties of the way that the bat and the ball engage with each other at the point of contact. All you are doing is you are providing a structural mechanism by which a kid can do the thing that we understand that they've done in the game for hundreds of years, which is choke up. So look, on the Thumbguard side, neither one of my kids swung with a Thumbguard often. My son now is swinging with one in high school because he's moved from a 2-piece bat to a 1-piece bat. And man, if this isn't far in the weeds minutia that I know that some people are just going to fall asleep to, like I'm sorry. I will try to make this topic as sexy and palatable as possible. I just don't understand what we're trying to do here, right? The Thumbguard is something that my son wanted to go back to now that he's swinging a 1-piece, because 1-pieces are inherently a little bit more susceptible to that type of off-axis vibration because there isn't any type of dampening, which a lot of bats have, between the barrel piece and the handle piece. A lot of the 2-pieces, there's the barrel piece, and then there's some sort of like dampening item that then connects to the handle piece. So you've got some inherent reduction in the capacity for that off-axis vibration to work its way all the way into the handle and then give you stingers, which, I mean, not you, but your kid stingers, and they hate that. There is nothing that'll end a hitting session faster than a kid getting a stinger, right? So the Thumbguard acts to kind of solve that by means of mitigating the feeling of that off-axis vibration if you do create it. And inherently, I suppose the thing that you're looking for there is you're trying to provide some amount of, I guess, physical presumption of safety for a child to be able to like actually cut it loose and swing because they're not worried about catching stingers. And if that's the thing that we believe to be the effect of using a Thumbguard, why are we banning it? Specifically in a recreational baseball environment, what are we gaining? I have a real hard time understanding what the intention is here and what the genesis of the problem is. And I will admit, and maybe I should have admitted this 5 minutes ago, if there's some underground issue of these type of products, either something that helps a kid choke up or a Thumbguard, and they're being used in some way, shape, or form that's has a negative outcome, I will grant that maybe that's a possibility, and maybe that's something that I'm not informed of. So if that's a thing and you understand what the genesis of this particular rule change was, holler at your boy, because I have a really hard time understanding it. And specifically, I don't understand how these things are considered a bat alteration or modification. There is enough going on in the world, in this little weird ecosystem that we exist in, of companies, legitimate businesses being stood up that revolve around rolling youth bats, breaking them in, whatever. There's enough of that going on that I have a hard time understanding why this is a thing that we are focused on trying to solve for. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I will grant that maybe there is an aspect of this issue that I don't understand. So if you have some inside dope there, give me a holler, because I would like to understand. Because on the face of it, I don't really understand it. It is definitively not a modification or alteration of the bat. Tomato, potato. This is not the same thing as rolling it. This is not the same thing as pulling an end cap off and doing whatever voodoo stuff that people do to try to extract more bats, more performance out of a bat that is fresh out of the wrapper. This is not that. It just isn't. Again, I'm willing to be proven wrong or informed of some other aspect of this issue that has compelled this type of response and like this significant of a rule change, because let's say there's 8 million kids playing rec ball. How many of them are swinging with a thumb guard? 10%? Let's say it's 5, right? Let's say it's 5. Okay, so 10% of 8 million is 800,000. Half of that is 400,000. Public school, baby. So 400,000 kids are being told that they can't use a thumb guard this season. Is that making the game better? Like, I fail to understand the benefit here. I'm willing to get more information to help understand it, but like at present, this seems a little misdirected. I will say, and I say that with all the esteem in the world for the men and women that are involved with trying to run a rule set that applies to this level of people with a volunteer workforce. Like trust me, I am fully on board with the complexities of what it would look like to run something like this organization, just from a rule standpoint. This one I have a real hard time understanding, and I mean, I guess we're here already. I also have a hard time understanding the basic like deletion of the boundary exemption, because that's another thing that's happening. I have some different thoughts on that one. We'll probably turn that into an issue in an episode in and of itself. But for the time being, let me just leave it and say that like I don't have a hard time understanding. The other thing I want to talk about today is I had a chance to work with some kids lately, high school kids who are in the middle of their season. Never been to Driveline before, never trained the way that we trained before. And it was interesting. And my first thought when it comes to kids who are like in the middle of the season, and again, who kids are playing for an org that I don't coach in, on a team that I don't coach, the first thing that comes to mind is like, it's like a do no harm thing, right? If I don't know these kids very well, they're in the middle of the season, they're playing for other orgs, the last thing that I'm going to do is come in and just be like, let me start with page 1, chapter 1 of the Skills and Skill Youth Baseball Training Manual, and like really, try to give the full like 7-course meal to a kid who's in season. I'm not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I am 100% sensitive to the fact that like the potential for there to be this kind of framing that's like, oh, well, such and such, he went to Driveline, those Driveline guys screwed his swing up. Like that's in play. Whether that type of stuff is appropriate or called for, I guess is a different matter altogether. But like I'm also aware enough to know that's a thing, and I don't want to play in that space. But two, the hitters that I had come in are having really good seasons. Like all things considered, they're having very good seasons. So the last thing that I want to do is feel like I have to put my particular spin on it. because in season is probably not the time to make like drastic changes. I was talking with Elijah Boyer, who's our lead hitting trainer down at Driveline, Arizona. And I was talking to him about some of the changes that my son is going through this year. And he, as I've talked about often on the show, he's always had a big leg kick. And the big leg kick got turned into a toe tap, I want to say when he was like 13, because he rolled over a foot playing, it was like gym PE football, if I remember correctly. And then kind of worked his way back to the toe tap, ended up kind of having a real significant net negative for his ability to create load in his in the front part of his swing. Bat speed was still there, so competitively he was fine, but it very much kind of like led him to this ceiling of, at the time, I want to say it was like high 80s EVs. And then even as he got a little bit older, it was like 90, 91, 92s-ish, that it kind of seemed like he had plateaued on, because there was, look, he's moving the bat like mid-sevens, sometimes, a little bit higher than that. But to get more out of it, you have to sequence more effectively, right? Like you have to find a different way to use your whole body to produce power, which means you need to find the ability to engage with that stretch shortening cycle. You need to be able to find some load, right? An actual load and some actual coil. So we worked on that in this off season, right? And kind of landed on a little bit of a very low, kind of a lighter leg kick type of deal. If anybody follows me on socials, you've probably seen it. You follow, my son on socials, you've probably seen it. And found that load and found that coil and was able to unlock it was like a 97 mile an hour exit velocity PR. Numbers were in a great space. But then got into season and felt like his ability to find time with that movement solution wasn't as reliable as he wanted it to be. And for a while, he's worked on kind of like a 2K swing that was a no stride. To put that in plain English, in a true strike count, with less than 2 strikes, he would have his normal swing, a little bit of a leg kick. With 2 strikes, he's moving to a no stride, right? He's kind of just going to assume that we're going to take some pieces off the table, be able to use the bat to ball skills, use the bat speed, and maybe not look to do damage with 2 strikes, but just find a way to do something productive, to catch a barrel, move some runners around, get on base, etc. And I remember when he told me he had a practice, he had a high school practice, and they were doing, I think they were either working like a 2-strike approach, or he was deciding to work a 2-strike approach, and just kind of went like no stride for the whole thing and hit a ball 380 something to dead center, and was like, oh, like I can still kind of produce power in this different swing feel. He's like, well, let me try to do that, because he's kind of doing the math that goes, if I've got the same type of power or close to it, but I have less moving parts, which means my ability to find time is going to be improved, then like I'll make that choice, because the benefits in competition seem worth it, to put it simply. But the interesting thing about like changing swing movements in the middle of the season is that like it's not just kind of automatic. Like it takes time and it takes reps to kind of build that stuff up. And he started to catch some barrels, but just didn't really feel like the time was natural. And then ended up, I think at present, kind of going back to where we were. Very long-winded way of saying that when I talked to Boyer last week, the thing that when I was telling him about this experience that my son was having, he was like, everybody goes through it. The trick is just to find the load in the swing movement that makes you feel the most athletic. It's like, oh, yeah. And I think it's important to pay attention when dudes like that are working with athletes of that caliber speak. Like I saw this clip on Instagram this week of of a pro coach of a local sports team, who gets asked this question about, like, oh, what's the number one thing you would, suggest for like youth hitters? And it was like, basically it came down to, don't take their athleticism away. And to bring it all the way back, that was kind of the perspective that I had when I'm working with these high school kids they're not driveline guys, right? I don't want to get in the way. I do not want to take away their athleticism. I'm really cautious about introducing new ideas. So what do we do if that's the thing that you've been presented with, right? There's this thing where I think as coaches sometimes, like, we feel like we have to do something, and I don't even think that that's like a misguided thing, like there's sometimes that gets framed as like, somebody, you got to put your stamp on them, and it's like, it's not even that. I think there's a well-intentioned thing of like, I want to be able to provide value. I want to help. But then you leave that unchecked and you can end up, it's like trying to cook a quesadilla. Basic ingredients of a quesadilla. Tortilla, cheese. Right? Pretty simple. We can go maybe one level further. I'm going to get some Kewpie mayo. A little bit of Kewpie mayo on the outside of those tortillas because it's going to help that tortilla crisp up. It's going to utilize that fat, a little bit of the tang for the Kewpie mayo. Good upgrade. Kewpie mayo, cheese, right? Like Kewpie mayo on the... Let me be clear. A light layer of Kewpie mayo on the tortilla. Don't turn this into like a mayo and cheese sandwich, for the love of God. That sounds like an absolute abomination. I mean like a 1/64th, 1/128th thick, very fine layer of Kewpie mayo on the outside part of those tortillas. It's going to help them crisp up a little bit. Give it a try. There's that, slightly upgraded than our just tortilla and cheese. We could go Kewpie mayo, a little chipotle powder, a little garlic powder, maybe some sauteed diced onions in with the cheese. There's a bunch of different ways you can layer that up. You ever get like the Bloody Mary in the menu, and it's got like a piece of broccoli and an artichoke and some asparagus and a piece of bacon and maybe a burger? Like, you can do too much. And if you're a fan of like the Bloody Marys with like a full-on like brunch sandwich on top, like, it's not my place to tell you that you're wrong, but I also just would submit that like a well-executed Bloody Mary that doesn't come with like a deli sandwich on top of it is probably just as good and just as effective. The parallel that I'm trying to draw here is when I'm working with these high school kids, we very much stayed in this lane of ball flight, ball flight, ball flight. Wasn't trying to do too much, but there is a really valuable thing that you can kind of teach someone, which is to understand the output of the last swing relative to the ball flight you achieved. From that, you can go, what's the ball flight goal for my next swing that I want to try to modify off of that to get closer to the ideal? It's simple, but it's not basic. It is sophisticated simplicity, which maybe is a thing that I used as a blog title sometime in the last couple years, and I'll link that in the show notes. But like, this type of sophisticated simplicity is not a bad thing. And I think for me, it held value in this session working with high school hitters, but it's just as valuable working with like 10-year-olds. I can take a group of high school kidders out on the floor here, and I can give them all the soup about all the technical stuff that I think I know, all the big $5 words, right? If it doesn't help them finding new barrels, who cares? And if that's true with high school kids, consider the application when it comes to like 10, 11, 12s, right? The thing I'm not worried about when I'm talking hitting concepts to a high schooler is whether they understand the words that I'm using or not. Right? Even my big fancy $5 words. They're smart. They're smart kids. They're not stupid. They've been around baseball a lot. They're going to understand, right? 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, the assumption that we have the universally shared vocabulary is the first way that train rolls off the tracks. And if I don't heat check all the words that I use within that session, the opportunity for the athlete to not understand what I'm asking for, to like blindly say a yes, coach, because that's what they think that I want them to say, are very high. But again, if that confuses them, if that leads them to not understand how to execute this type of like ball flight driven feedback in a session, number one, I'm just wasting their time. Number two, it's possible that they're working on the wrong thing. Number three, they're just like, they're not going to get any better. So this same concept about executing a sophisticatedly simple approach of ball flight directed training in season for high school kids is absolutely the thing you should be doing with your Little League team. It's absolutely the thing you should be doing with your 12U tournament team. Kids are not small adults. Gee, I wonder who said that. They're not. Physiologically, they're not the same place. They don't have the same vocabulary. They don't have the same understanding of their bodies, their swings. They have even less of an understanding of how to move their bodies in the swing because they are children. This type of sophisticated simplicity in actual application is only going to make your athletes' lives easier. I know you want to provide a ton of value. I know sometimes you want to flex your muscle about the new thing that you heard, or the new thing that you learned, or the new thing that you saw on Instagram. I'm pretty convicted. You show me an elite 12-year-old, you show me a 12-year-old that plays 4 different sports. In baseball, they only play when it's baseball season. I will guarantee you all of those kids are going to be benefited most by focusing on maximizing for the goal of the next swing. What is the goal of what we are trying to achieve? Because what they are dealing with, in so much as they have limited capacity to coordinate their movements, they have limited capacity to proprioceptively understand where they are in space, they have limited capacity to understand how to move their bodies generally. The thing that they do understand inherently, and to a degree implicitly, is goals, the effect of action. It's not lazy coaching. It's not simple coaching. It is sophisticatedly simple and effective, and it's going to help your kids. The feedback that I got from the dad was he had a ton of fun, said he really appreciated your direction. I said, I really didn't give much at all. Last thing I want to do is introduce any big changes or ideas to a kid who's raking this season. Mostly just talk to him about having different ball flight targets to find flush contact. It's good hitting. It's good hitting. The dad had a really great comment. Shout out to you. You know who you are. He told me twice that he appreciated, found it helpful. Sometimes the best we can do is just get out of their way. He's right. I love the idea of having a coaching session where I say the golden magic word and the light bulb flashes and we all have that moment. Sometimes you can have that same moment by saying, hit that ball over there. Oh, that didn't work to hit it on the pull side because you couldn't find time to hit on the pull side? Okay, hit a foul ball. Oh, you're too early and over-rotated? He made a low line drive homer to the oppo field. Oh, that we're not being able to find that. We can't find the pull side. We can't find oppo. Hey, we're just going to start dead center. Give me some center field contact. Shift the ball flight target. I assure you it is like the one aspect of youth hitting coaching that is, to me, from what I've seen, what I've heard, and what I've experienced, is the least, it's the most underutilized. And there is a ton of gold in the hill of just allowing the swing mechanics to be a reflection of the goals. Because in the game, what matters? Does it matter that you had a perfect 1-to-1 approximation of Ted Williams' swing if you're not on time? Consider that the swing movement is something that's built over thousands and thousands and thousands of replication and adaptation to different swings on different pitches at different times at different locations. It's an adaptation sport, man. I fundamentally believe that like this lens of coaching through the external cues through ball flight target is just the one thing that there's so much gold in the hill for you to be guys to be able to go out, you guys and girls, to be able to go out and coach your hitters with. And if you got questions for how that's to apply that stuff more effectively, hit me up. Hit us up on socials. We can make that part of this interactive thing. If you want, you can buy the Skills to Skill. It'll be complete youth baseball training manual because it's really good and it's going to explain all this stuff, soup to nuts. But yeah, it's a huge thing that can be done. Want to spend a couple minutes here talking about this week in pitch counts. We are moved on to episode 3. Shout out to you guys for pumping it out. Hugely appreciated. This week in pitch counts, we're talking a little bit less about the rule side of things, but we're talking about the reason. Why are kids being overused in youth baseball, specifically on the pitching side? And this isn't rocket science, right? This isn't like a Nobel Prize winning thought. But in the bordering on 15 years that I've been very, very, very close to youth baseball, the reason is very simple. We don't have enough pitching. Right? So think about the 7.8 million kids who are playing consistently in organized baseball in this country. Because that's about what the number is. There's like 7.8 million, if I remember correctly. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. We talked about the universal pitch count and universal reporting presentation to MLB and USA Baseball. If you're going to go back and listen to an episode, humbly submit that that's one you should listen to. So it's like 7.8 million kids that are committed, recurring youth baseball players in this country. How many of them are on 12 and under teams? Well, we know that the most significant drop-off that we have in youth baseball typically happens around in the transition from the 6 to 12 to 13 to 17s, right? Those are the two, if you think about the two biggest cohorts, the most significant drop is in that 6 to 12 to 7 to 13. Now, if you think about 6 to 12, right, so from T-ball all the way up to Little League Majors, 12U tournament ball, there are other drop-off points within that. But if you think about the two largest cohorts, 6 to 12 to 13 to 17, so you could probably assume that big body of 7.8 million kids playing consistent baseball in the United States, I would offer that it is probably like a 3-to-1, roughly. And I could probably dig into the stats and actually get a firm number of this. But like it's probably somewhere between 2-to-1, 3. No, it's for sure bigger than 2-to-1. It's probably 3-to-1 of how many of those kids in that 7.8 are from 6 to 12 as opposed to 13 to 17. Okay. So if it's 3-to-1, let's say that's right around, I don't know, 4, 5-ish million that are in the 6 to 12 cohort. Whatever. I'm not going to sit here and do the math for you guys, but you understand what you're picking up what I'm putting down. If it's 4 to 5 million kids, divide that number by 12, figure out the amount of teams. Each one of those teams probably has, I don't know, let's say it's somewhere between 2 to 3 who are competent and competitive pitchers. Right? That's typically how it works. When you have that configuration where there is a need for a discrete skill, pitching is for sure a discrete skill from 6 to 12. If you have a definitive need for that skill to be performed, because you need it if you're going to play a game, and you don't have enough players that are at present competent and capable of performing that skill, then it kind of stands to reason that the kids who can perform it are going to wear a disproportionate percentage of the innings that need to be pitched. You can layer onto that the reality that as more and more kids are playing club and select baseball, and the output of club and select baseball is to win generally, now you have a multiplying force on the core problem. The core problem is you don't have enough kids that are competent at the task. The task must be performed for us to be able to have actual baseball games. And if you add on to that the need to win, then of course, kids are going to be more likely than not overused, right? So how does that look? All right, so what we started this week on This Week in Pitch Counts, and I will put it up, is we got our buddy Hudson. Hudson is going to have activity in the box score as a pitcher in 3 games. So game 1, 5 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no earned, 1 walk, 8 punchies. And he does it on 53 pitches for 41 strikes. And that is just that is a line. That is just a wonderful, wonderful line. And if I remember correctly, I want to say that these kids were 10. Let me actually pull it up just to heat check myself. 10U. So we got Hudson, 10U, and he's kind of carving, right? He's carving. And at 10U, how many other kids are capable of having these type of performances? Well, the answer is not enough. And the answer is clearly not enough because of what happens next. So next game, Hudson goes 56 pitches, 36 strikes. No hits, no runs, no earned, 1 walks, 5 punchies. Only pitches 2 2/3. So this is a run rule, right? This is a tournament baseball. They run ruled him. Pitch the first game and it goes great. Okay, that's our pool play or whatever. He's going to go again because you need him, right? You know he's going to be able to throw strikes, and it's 10U baseball. Do I have 3 or 4 other kids on the team who are as good as Hudson at this task? Probably not. And then what happens next? Game 3, 103 pitches. So in total, we got something like $192 over 3 games. Standard caveats here. I trust and believe that this is a coach who is doing what they believe to be right for their organization, for the team, and for this kid, for Hudson, as a player. That's all well and good. The problem is that this is what overuse looks like. This is what overuse looks like. And this is what it looks like when you have a team that has a need to play games and a need to be competitive in those games, but they don't have enough players that can competently perform that task. You're going to have to overly rely on the kids who do. And this is why overuse is kind of implicit the more and more we move kids away from recreational baseball, which should have, giant asterisk, because I'm sure not only did I play rec baseball games where I've coached against guys who needed to win, I am also sitting here and telling you that I played youth baseball games and rec ball that I needed to win. And it is possible that absent a solution like MLB Pitch Smart, that I would have gone down this path when I was a younger baseball coach and I was convinced about the need for us to win. And look, we can go rounds about the role of winning in youth baseball. One of the videos that we've done that's gone viral on socials has lended me with, we did a clip that talks about, intentional walks in 8U baseball, and I talk about how preposterous that is. I talk about how stupid it is that you would deprive a child of a learning opportunity, because you're trying to maximize for competition results. And, about every 2-3 weeks, I'm going to get somebody that hits the comments in there because it'll just get recycled through the algorithm and goes, you don't know what you're talking about. Winning is so important, and these kids need to learn how to win, yada, yada, yada. Fine. Totally fine. that's not a thing that we necessarily need to agree on. I have a perspective. My perspective is informed by the things that I've read, the things that I've learned, the experience that I've had. Your perspective might be informed by your experience with your child or a team that you're coaching. So we can have some variance about the understanding of how important winning is in youth baseball and how necessary it is for children to need to learn the importance of winning. There's a lot of granularity to that discussion broadly, and I don't want to steamroll over that. But the thing that I will say is that if the need for winning comes at the expense of children's health, then we probably need to pump our brakes a little bit. And that's what this is. 192 pitches over 3 games screams, I am desperate to win, and I don't have enough other competitive and competent players that push me down that path. So Hudson, guess what? It's on you, dog. It's on you. How do we solve this? Why does it need to be solved? Let's go to why first. Because the one thing I did get from one of my coworkers here at Driveline, who shall remain anonymous, guy hit me up. He's like, hey, I love what you're doing with the This Week's in Pitch Counts. That's tight. Let me tell you what happened to me when I was a kid. I was like, oh, do tell. I will read for you guys verbatim. Of course, I can definitely tell you. I was one of 2 pitchers on my youth teams every year. One of 2. So rewind the tape about 90 seconds ago where we were trying to break down this number and this configuration and my assumption that like these youth teams at best have somewhere around 2 kids that can competently pitch. I was one of 2 pitchers on my youth teams every year, only one that could throw strikes, so I played way too much. It continues. Every summer in high school, I kept playing all summer, as you do, and had to shut down throwing from tendonitis multiple times. What's tendonitis? Class? Is this an acute injury? Well, I mean, it's a acute injury. Why does it happen? Repetitive stress. Repetitive stress. Not enough break. Overuse. By the end of college, senior year, I was throwing 2 times per weekend as a reliever, but popping 800 milligrams of ibuprofen to be able to play catch or do PFPs. On the weekends, it was anything I could get my hands on to bear down and throw. I just got pulled from my alumni game this year because I topped out at 55 miles an hour. Moral of the story, my kid will not be treated like an MLB starting pitcher for 10 plus years. I think one of the more frustrating responses to me trying to emphasize the need to attack this specific issue in youth baseball and drawing a correlation between everything that MLB touched on in the pitching injury report and the long tail effect of what's happening relative to overuse in youth and amateur baseball is kind of like this, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. And I will grant that an excessive amount of pitching injuries in youth baseball is not necessarily tantamount to the long-term effects of CTE due to repeated head injury in football. I can't say that those 2 things are the same, right? One of these things deals with like real specific decay and detrimental effect to function of the brain. The other is your arm. It's just your arm. So it's not necessarily the same thing. However, that doesn't mean that the issue doesn't have long-term effects. So when you have guys like my coworker who says, wish more people knew that youth workload can be the difference between being able to play catch with your kids when you are older or not. Don't tell me that nothing is at stake. Don't tell me that this doesn't have cost. Don't tell me that people's lives are not being affected negatively because we are sitting here looking at this issue and going, I don't know. Maybe it's because they're throwing curveballs. Maybe it's because they're throwing too hard. Maybe it's because of weighted balls. I get you. And I will grant that on the edges, each one of those issues has some potential negative effect. And I've beaten them into full-blown horse glue, and I will continue to accept the idea that like there is stuff on the fringes that is having some negative effect. But the one thing that affects everybody, hard throwers, slow throwers, average throwers, the kids that throw a lot of strikes, the kids that don't throw a lot of strikes, everything in between, the thing that affects all of them universally are issues around moderating and controlling for excessive amounts of workload and avoiding overuse. It affects everybody. I can make the case that the hard-throwing 12-year-old is at a greater need for control around overuse than a soft-throwing 12-year-old. But I will also say that a soft-throwing 12-year-old that throws a crap ton of strikes is going to be exposed to the potential of excessive overuse. Excessive overuse? Okay, that ain't it. Exposed to the potential for overuse just as the hard thrower. It's systemic. And it is implicit in the environment we have created where winning is a priority and you have a disproportionately small percentage of players that can perform the task. That's why we are where we are. So if you think that the health of our game is not going to be impacted over the long term because you have guys like my coworker who are like, I got run to death, and I don't know what it looks like for me to be able to play catch with my child. Those people are going to sit there and do math when they become parents to decide whether this thing is appropriate for their child or not. Because of course they are. It's your biological imperative as a parent. Keep the child healthy. I made that thing. I made a thing. I want it to avoid the negative outcomes that I had. I want it to be informed by the experience that I've had. I want it to be safe. I want it to be happy. I want it to be healthy. Do we not see the potential for much more significant negative outcomes in our game if we have a generation of children who have grown up in this club and select ball world that come to think, you know what, when I have kids, I don't know that I want them to play baseball. It's not necessarily about like the holiday family, right? It's not the effect on those kids, because those kids and kids like that are growing up idolizing a parent who played at the highest level of the high levels. And they're getting a ton of informed experience about what it took to get there, and they get a lot of the reality of what that is. And that parent, right, Matt Holliday, can make good decisions about what's appropriate for his child because he's very close and has a better understanding than probably even me about what it takes to get there. Not even probably, he definitely has a better understanding than I do. I don't have a problem granting that in the slightest. But the issue is the other like 95% of the population, right? Well, actually, let's get more specific because it's worse than that. The actual percentage of the population, if you really want to get into it, is, oh my gosh, dead air. How long can I let this go? I lost my thing. The actual percentage of the population, I mean, this is like my chart about the amount of kids who play youth baseball and go on to play high school baseball. High school, they go on to play college ball. College would go to pro. It's a little bit less than 2% if I remember correctly. But let's just start with the kids who play college baseball. 95% of all high school baseball players are not playing college baseball. So the number of youth baseball players who go on to play college baseball is probably even smaller than that. And I apologize. I'll look up the exact number because I'm a data-driven guy. I want to be able to explain my position. But the point being is that like the long tail effect of overuse isn't only solved because Matt Holliday gives Jackson and the rest of his kids good advice to make sure that those kids are healthy and developing the right tools and skill sets. It's not them. It's the other 95% of the population who has the capacity, because of a lack of system, lack of control, a lack of implementation of said system to be overused and injured, and then develop a negative relationship with the game in and of itself. You can't tell me that's not a significant problem. You can't tell me that's not a significant problem. It's not one that we need to be that we need to attack. And look, man, I will go one step further on you, because there's a layer of this that involves youth baseball. There's also a layer of this involved in high school baseball. I was made aware of a game that took place in the last couple weeks. You see how I'm like not leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. I was made aware. Happened in the last few weeks. I'm trying to be very nebulous here. Because again, much like the initiative around This Week in Pitch Counts, I don't care about crapping on individual coaches or teams. I don't care about crapping on organizations. What I want to do is I want to paint a picture that is informed by the scope and scale of what's going on. So you guys, thank you for sending that stuff in. I've gotten a bunch of it. I could do enough This Week in Pitch Counts to probably last out the rest of the summer based on the stuff that I've already got, but I need more from you. I need to know what you guys are seeing on the ground level. So at me on socials, at us at Driveline Youth, send it into my email, deven@drivelinebaseball.com, 2 E's. Let me know what you're seeing. Because based on the early returns, the scale of this thing is just as bad as I thought it was. So within the last 2 weeks to 2 months, I'll be even more nebulous. I'm going to muddy the waters. There's a kid who's a Power 5 D1 commit, pitching a high school baseball game, pitching for a team. His high school team is actually not that good. He knows he's going to go play Division I college baseball. He's probably going to be a pitcher because that's probably where his best stuff is. I don't know. Maybe he two-ways. Who knows? And he throws mid-nines. Like the kid has juice. Kid has juice. Already committed because he's a junior this year. So he goes out, and he's 91, 93 in the game. Right? He's also a kid. So when you start to look at the play-by-play, couple walks, gets an out, gives up a barrel, a walk, hit batter. This is just a thing that can happen, right? This is a thing that can happen in our game. You look at a guy, pick a Hall of Famer off the bump. I guarantee you that guy has had a really crappy start. It just happens sometimes. And every bad start is, bad starts are not insurmountable, right? But I think that the picture that I can paint here is, from what I understand, part of the reason this team is not very good is they don't have a lot of depth at pitching. So what have we been talking about, right? The more that you lack players that can kind of compete in this discrete skill, the more that there is the burden of performance that gets dropped on the kids who can. Starts the game 90, 92, what did I say, 91, 91, 93, tops of 4. Struggling. So we get to around pitch 30. See the first heater at 88. Again, 91, 93, top touching a 4. Now we see a heater at 88. And look, I'm also aware that there's a bunch of different ways you can explain an 88 mile an hour heater that is 6 miles an hour off this kid's top. Hey, kid just needs to get a strike in. It's a 3-0 count. He's like, hey, let me take 30% off. And I'm just going to try to get one in there because I need to get a strike. I have to put something on the board, and I know it's going to be a perpetual take sign if I don't establish I can throw a strike. But it's not just one. 88 turns into 85. 91, 92, 93 turns into 90. 90, 88, 87, 86, 88, 84, 84. Kid gets pulled, or kid finishes the inning with a pitch count north of 45. I understand not wanting to send a signal to a kid that they don't have it today and being a little bit slow on the trigger about getting somebody warmed up in the pen. I understand holding out hope. And I want a kid to get through that one inning. And then, hey, let's say that, we bat around a little bit. Kid gets an opportunity to rest. Maybe they can come out and give you a little bit more. But by the time that we are in the upper 40s, what are we doing? What are we doing? You got a kid who their future has already been confirmed to be taking one step past high school baseball. That's a box that's already been checked. So what's important here? And I'm also aware that a kid like that wants to compete for his team. You think he's willing to accept that his high school team is just not that good this year? No shot. Because the same competitiveness that forces a kid like that to work their tail off to get, a college commitment of this stature those two things aren't compatible, right? You can't be that type of dog and then also just be very ambivalent about the competitiveness of your high school team. I have a hard time imagining that checks out for a lot of people. But this is a failure of the system, and it's a failure of the adults in the equation. I have a hard time finding a compelling reason why you would hang a kid out there that long, other than the ones we've already discussed. Because the reality is when you actually look at it, and I had someone who got me some inside info, and that's obviously how I have the radar stuff. And again, thank you for you guys for being able to give me this type of information because it paints the picture really starkly. If 91, 93 touching a 4 turns into 85, 88, what's happening? Excess amount of fatigue has lead to kinetic and kinematic changes, which has effects on performance and inevitably accelerates our risk of injury. That's what's happening just at the physiological level, right? From everything we understand from the science. What's happening in real life, what's happening in the game, is you have a kid who's desperate to compete. And that kid is going to do everything they can to try to help their team. And you can't really tell them not to. It's we have a Schnauzer poodle. We have a schnoodle in my family. His name is Griffey. Ostensibly, he is part Schnauzer, part poodle. Having known this dog and having him been in our family for somewhere a little bit north of 10 years, it feels like at this point, our dog is 90% Schnauzer, 10% poodle. He has that terrier thing burned into his brain. So his reaction to a bird daring to perch itself on a tree outside of the window in our living room, it's that's a DEFCON 1 for him, man. He's going full nuclear because his biological imperative is to go chase that thing, right? He wants to hunt rabbits, he wants to hunt birds, that's his deal. He's a terrier. Kid who's a D1 commit going to a great school back east, this kid's probably going to die on the mound. I mean, and I'm being a little bit bombastic, but you understand what I'm saying. You need adults in the equation, or you need systems in place to protect that kid. Because when you count all the pitches in the first inning, which including the warm-ups is more than 50, and you see the velo take almost a 10-mile-an-hour drop in a single inning, what does that tell us about everything that's going on about the acute mechanism of injury when we blow out the acute workload this way? Think about that in the way that it reflects to a high school player that's committed to go play college baseball, but think about how that reflects on like some of the 12-year-olds that we talked about. You know, some of the 10, 11, 9-year-old kids who get hung out there for 75 pitches in an inning. We need better systems in place to control for this stuff. I can sit here and tell you that, like, absent a coma, as a coach, I would never let a kid go more than like 35 in an inning, and that's stretching it. Because by the time we get to like 25 and we got none dead, hey, look, I got to start getting somebody hot. I have to. Because for me, that stuff is important. And for me, I am aware that whether this is a game that's being played in a 12U tournament, whether this is a varsity high school baseball game, there's no benefit on the backside of this thing that is going to excuse me from injuring a child. Unless I am afflicted with some immediate onset coma, there's no way I'm not getting somebody hot. But there's some incentive structure there, right? Again, you're coming back to teams that don't have enough pitching, and let's say I can get him out of there at 40. Well, maybe I roll him back out for the second inning, and I go, all right, well, I'll get him up to like 60, 70 on the day, and that's fine, because that's another 20 or 30 pitches that one of the other members of my staff doesn't have to throw. And I don't think that those innings are going to be competitive because I don't have enough pitching. There are well-intended reasons and explanations for why overuse is implicit in youth baseball. All of them can be solved by, everybody want to say it together, universal pitch counts and universal reporting. Good job, class. I got the signal that coaches should be able to take from this is like, well, I need to develop more pitchers. And like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. But when are you going to do that? Can you do that in May? Can you just like sit there and go like, oh, snap. I don't have enough pitching. I got 3 months of tournament and league ball ahead of me, and I don't have enough competitive pitching. What am I going to do? You could start to pivot, right? But ultimately, this decision is probably better solved by choices that you're making between August and February. But come March, come April, come May, confronted with the reality of your roster deficiency, you're going to do the thing that you think is going to help the team and help the org best, which is deploy a disproportionate percentage of the pitching against a smaller and smaller percentage of your population, because you don't have enough time to help develop more competitive pitchers. And your base need here is to be competitive. This is the structural reason why this stuff happens, or at least in my understanding and explanation, that's what's going on. So I thought it was just worth going into that, because again, when you start to, what was shared with me, when you start to see, the last, let me give you the last 5 pitches that were thrown from the screenshot that I have here. 88, 87, 84, 87, 84. It's more than 10 miles an hour off of that kid's PR. What does that tell you is happening? It's everything that's borne out in the science. Excess fatigue, kinetic kinematic changes, delayed decrease in performance, excessive injury risk. See it right there in plain sight. So yeah, good times. Good times. The Youth Baseball Bummer Power Hour is officially back. It is officially back. I'm going to try to work hard to find a topic that we can talk about next week that isn't going to be a gigantic bummer. I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to collect some of the positive development stories you guys have sent me, and we're just going to talk about them. So if you have one of those, whether you bought a Youth Power Bat, a Youth Underload Smash Bat, Skills to Skill Complete Youth Baseball Training Manual, Youth Baseball Development Certification Course, the free programs, anything that we've put out there, if that's been of benefit to you, this is this week's engagement prompt. This is our interactive opportunity. If you've utilized any of those things, or hey man, you found something else. You got Ted Williams' Science of Hitting at a flea market, and it was beneficial for you. Give me a quick story. Shoot me out what's worked for you. We're going to talk about it on the pod. I don't want to do Bummer Power Hour next week, so we're going to turn next week is going to be a positive show. We're still going to continue this week in pitch counts. Maybe we'll find a way to positively spin the benefits of actual applying some individual workloads moderation. And actually, you know what, we're going to do that because I actually got a great prompt for this from somebody else who even in a PitchMart league implemented some new stuff to keep kids safe and healthy, and it's had some real significant benefits to them. So we're going to do that next week. I promise it's not going to be a bummer. Sorry. Hopefully this one wasn't a bummer. My bad. But I just when you see this stuff and I get screenshots of velos and you just see the trend going down and it connects to this other thing that is like the root issue of overuse in youth baseball, I had to bring it to you guys. So sorry. I don't know. Thank you for being there as per usual. Axebat.com, code DL20 will get you 20% off. Go get an OG Axe handle for your youth hitters. It is going to help them fix a palm-up, palm-down orientation of their hands. It's going to help develop better hitting mechanics and develop their ability to actually release the barrel when they should. It's just good for them. Or you can transition to the round knob. That works too. Snapshots, Driveline Academy Flex, we're rolling. We got a new training product that's rolling out next week, so next episode we'll be able to talk about that stuff too. We're just completing a sale on the youth education bundle, so the Skills to Scale book and the Youth Baseball Dev Cert. Hopefully you guys are enjoying that. Hopefully your seasons are going great. Hopefully you are executing good approaches to workload moderation, because we talk about this stuff all the time, and if you're doing that, man, I would shake the heck out of your hand, because I just appreciate you for doing the right thing, because you don't have to. You really don't have to. Unless you're in a rec ball little league that is mandating MLB PitchMart, you don't have to. Some of you guys are choosing to do it the right way. Man, I just have all the esteem in the world for you and appreciation, because and it means something that you're keeping these kids healthy. So thank you. I will be the one to say thank you for them. I will say thank you for listening to this show. My name is Deven Morgan. I'm down by law. I will catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.